You are not going to believe this, but genetics is fairly complicated. That's right. All the rules that we learned prior to our break about genetics, those are the rules. Those are the basics. Those are the things that we learned: dominance over recessiveness, having a heterozygous or homozygous genotype, all that good stuff. But as we saw in the first section of this new unit, there are exceptions to the rules. And this little section today further shows that. There are many exceptions that we're going to talk about. Everything don't just follow according to the rules that Mendel started to lay out and then we built on over time. So think about it like that. These are the exceptions to those rules. These are the things that kind of go outside the norm. And this just shows you how very complicated genetics really is. Okay? So phenotypes, remember that's what you physically can see, can depend on interactions of alleles, of course. We've learned the basics, the rules. If you're heterozygous, you got a dominant and recessive allele, the dominant always shows up. It masks over the recessive one. Then that's what you see, your phenotype. What you'd see would be the dominant trait or the dominant allele. Many traits, however, are the results of alleles with a range of dominance. Meaning it doesn't just stick to this one or the other type rule, okay? Many cases we'll also see it has to do with multiple genes. So it's more than just green or yellow pea or smooth or wrinkled pea, okay? There's not one or the other. There's lots of different options. Look at these people on this page. We see a variety of skin color. We see a variety of hair color, eye color, and that's just the beginning part of it. We can go into things like facial hair or shape of the face and things like that. Multiple genes give us these characteristics, not just one or the other, but a complex soup of lots of different genes. So let's look at a couple of pretty cool exceptions that give us some very interesting phenotypes. One is called incomplete dominance. And just like the name implies, neither allele that is present in the genotype is completely dominant. Okay, so neither one of them takes authority over the other one, or takes precedent, or takes showing off more than the other one. And so what we wind up with when we have a heterozygous phenotype, it's somewhere in between. It's somewhere in between the homozygous phenotypes. And we consider this blending. Think about that. I think it would be wise of you to relate incomplete dominance with blending. The video that you should have watched prior to these notes, it talked about this. I think it was the snapdragon plant, how when there's incomplete dominance, when it's a heterozygous genotype, it causes a blending of the red and the white phenotypes into a pink phenotype. And here we see it with this fish too. I don't know if this is a beta or what, but when we have these homozygous genotypes, we either have a green or a steel blue, but then when we have a heterozygous phenotype or genotype, we have this blending that we see. Okay, so incomplete dominance always equate to blending because neither one of them is dominant. Kind of in the same way, we have another situation, an exception to the rule. It's called co-dominance. Okay, and just like we would think about that, like co-captains or co-leaders. Both of them are in charge. They kind of work together to lead things. Co-dominance is when both traits are expressed completely. And this can look like a blending, but actually it shows more of a mixture of both of them. It doesn't just blend like with those snapdragons, red and white, and then you get a pink flower. Okay, or a long time ago we talked about how people used to think you mix a black and a white squirrel and then you get a gray one. We see here that, you might have that if it's incomplete dominance. But co-dominance, we see something different. We get both traits being seen. Here in this longhorn cattle, we may have a red one and we may have a white one. And if those are both certain genotypes, we'd have a mixture. It wouldn't blend them together. Instead, we'd get this what's called roan. That's their skin color. It's a mixture of both. Another popular example of co-dominance are speckled chickens. Speckled chickens, you may have seen these, a relative or somebody having these speckled chickens. If you were to mix certain genotypes that are black and certain genotypes that have a white phenotype, You can get this speckled chicken. It's where codominance, both of them are seen. It didn't blend up together like incomplete dominance to cause like a gray chicken or a light black chicken or something like that. Instead, we see both of them, okay? So think about codominance. Both of them are dominant. Both of them are going to be seen. Human blood type is a great example of codominance, okay? Because there's not really exactly one allele that is dominant over the other one. Instead, there's 3 different alleles that make up human blood type. Maybe you've heard of these. You know, you've heard of blood type A, B, and O. This chart is going to demonstrate a little bit of that over here. These are the names of it. And the reason there's 3 different alleles is that you could either have these antigen is something that's connected, antigen are these things that are on the red blood cells. So a red blood cell, which a bunch of those together makes up the bulk of our blood, you might have this antigen for A, or you might have this antigen for B, or you may not have any antigens at all. Okay, so that's why there's 3 different alleles. So we write it, and we'll look at this a little bit, but don't get too caught up in it. When neither allele are dominant or recessive, in codominance, both the A and B are dominant. So this is codominance. You use uppercase letters and then superscripts, as they're called. Sometimes you may see subscripts. Those are down below, like you're probably used to using. Well, you hadn't had chemistry yet, but you use them in chemistry a good bit. So look at this. And we'll do some work with blood types too. If you have blood type A, it means that your alleles, your genotype is you get one from mom, one from dad, right? One of them has the antigen A and the other one has the antigen A, or one of them has the antigen A and the other one has no antigens. But here, this would be dominant, okay? The A is a dominant trait, so it would take, place over the no antigen. Same case with B. B is dominant over the no antigens. Down here on the bottom, we're skipping this one for a minute. This would be if you got a no antigen from mom or dad. That means you have blood type O, as we call it. But here's where the codominance is seen with this blood type AB. It gets both of them. So just like the speckled chicken, that black and white both show up. Both antigens show up in blood type AB. So that's why it's codominant, because neither one of them here take the front from the other one, right? They are both seen instead. Okay, so this has 3 different alleles. Human blood type is a great example of codominance. It's hopefully very easy to see and understand that A and B are both dominant over having none, or what we call O. But then when you have A and B both together, it's codominant. Both of them are seen. Now, most genes, or many genes, may interact to produce one trait. I wished it was as easy with people, for example, as it was with pea plants. That's why Mendel's stuff was so amazing, that it all came together to work out the way it did. Peas have a lot of monogenic traits, meaning that they only have to do with one set of allele. So things like pea tallness, or the pea shape, or the pea color, and things like that only really look at one gene. Now, a lot of organisms, including a lot of advanced organisms like us, they have polygenic traits, excuse me, meaning that 2 or more genes determine certain traits. Skin color is a big one. There's 4 genes that interact together to produce a range of colors, okay? It's almost like if you had a series of like switches, okay? Like say pretend we had 4 switches, and if you flip the first one on, it may cause the light to come on at the end of the circuit, okay? But if you flip the second one on, it may turn it off. Or if you flip the third one on, it may turn it off again, or it may keep it off, and the fourth one also contributes. So you can flip it on or off. So it'd be like a series, or almost like a combination lock. It's not just as easy as one thing causes an outcome. Okay, so these genes come together, and this is what causes such a wide variety of things. Think about somebody that's dark-skinned. Okay, now their skin may be darker than somebody else that's considered dark-skinned, or it may be lighter. This is also the reason why if you have really light skin and both your parents are fairly darker skinned, tan light, you can still get that. It doesn't mean that you're adopted or something like that. It just means that the switches turned on or off in a certain way that cause your skin color to have such variety. Things like skin color, things like eye color. is another one. It shows at least 3 genes, and there is some hypotheses that there's actually more, but it's just so rare that we see them that we can't really get a lot of research. But they switch on or off, and if certain ones are on, say brown, the order of dominance right here shows that brown is the dominant eye color. So if brown is available or coming into it, it's going to be seen. But then green is the next, and blue is the least dominant. So think about it. If you had in your set of all these genes, these polygenic trait, lots of genes, the one for having brown turned on, then that's what's going to be seen. But if it's turned off, it's going to go to the next gene, which may be green. And if it's turned on, guess what? You got green eyes. If it's not, guess what? You move on to blue. There's also certain blends and things. You can kind of see it in this picture. Hazel eyes also fits in here. So it's not as easy as just going on or off, on and off, on or off. There's also some blending. Polygenic traits, a lot of more advanced organisms, this is what we look at. This is why when we're looking at last unit, I'm a little hesitant to use like, okay, a person is either tall or short and they, have this, phenotype, or they're black or white and they have this phenotype, because there's so much more than just A or B. Okay, there's so much more this or that. Epistasis is when one gene overshadows all of the others. Okay, so in other words, it's almost like this is the super gene in this polygenic trait. Okay, albinism is caused by this type of gene. Now, albinism is a genetic disorder, I guess a lot of people consider a genetic trait, where you have no pigment in the skin at all. Okay, we'll learn more about it in 11th grade. And you've probably seen somebody or at least another organism with albinism. But what happens is when this one gene for albinism is turned on, all the other ones don't matter. This little hedgehog, porcupine, whatever he is here, he may have been brown or gray or something like that if all the other genes would have been turned on, but the one for albinism was. So it trumps, it overshadows, it comes to the forefront, all the other ones, turns all the other ones, they're meaningless. They're still in his genetic code, or she, but they don't show up in the phenotype. Okay, here's just a little information on albinism. It's an autosomal recessive trait. Okay, so that's why we can see, one of the parents may not have, or both of them may not have albinism, but they may carry that trait. Okay, they may be a carrier for that trait and it show up later on. So kind of an interesting thing, albinism. Last thing I wanted to hit on is the environment interacts with genotype. It's not as easily as just saying your genetic code is this and this is the way you're always going to be. Phenotype is more than just the sum or the equation or the end result of gene expression. The way that you grow up or the environment that you find yourself in can also affect you in certain ways. Okay. Sex of sea turtles, for example, depends on the environment that it's around. The temperature that the eggs are laid in determines the sex. I can't remember exactly which one, but if it's hot weather, they may be male. Or if there's a cold spell when a female, sea turtle lays its eggs, they may all be female, or maybe vice versa. I can't remember off the top of my head, sorry. So, but temperature causes that. Another thing is human traits can also be affected by the environment. Think about the environment not just like as the weather, okay, or the temperature, but as your nutrition and healthcare. Think about, twins are a great example. If you've ever heard about twins being separated or living in different places and how they don't look alike anymore, or even twins that live together and then as they get older and they interact with their environment more, they may look different. One of them may be big and one of them may be little. I had 2 friends growing up that were identical twins, but by the time we got in high school, one of them weighed about 100 pounds more than the other one. Was that genetic expression? No, they were identical. They had the same genes. One of them just liked to eat better than the other one, and he was not as physically active. So nutrition and healthcare play a big role in that. That's your environment. Siamese cat, same way. The expression of their coat colors has to do with temperature. And this is one you've probably seen around here. I have some of these in my little garden at my house. Hydrangeas. And I have one on one side of my house that turns bright blue, and one on the other side of the house turns pink. They are the same hydrangeas, got them from the same seeds, cut them from the same plant and all that good stuff. But the pH level of the soil, remember we learned a little bit about pH in our first unit, acidic or basic. The pH level of the soil affects what color those hydrangeas will end up being. So I wanted you to see several examples of how our environment also affects what organisms look like. Okay? Genetics play the huge role, but environment also plays several key things. So here we see exceptions to the rules. Hopefully you can see how these interact with the world and give us such great variety.